You are listening to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda. Today, I am delighted to bring to you a conversation with Luke Ottenhof about the work of John Samson Fellows and Luke's article Lay It Down, published March 11th, 2026 by Hazlitt, about the current status of John's musical endeavors. Luke Ottenhof is a freelance writer based in Montreal, Quebec, and he is an associate editor at Premier Guitar. And he reports on and writes about music, culture, labor, colonialism, drugs, and harm reduction for outlets around the world in publications like Popular Mechanics, GQ, Billboard, The Guardian, Pitchfork, Hazlitt, The Daily Beast, and more. You can also check out his band Bricky at the Bandcamp link in the episode notes, as well as direct links to this article and others by Luke. Please enjoy my conversation about the work of John Samson Fellows with Luke Ottenhof. Luke Ottenhof, welcome to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda.
Thank you for having me. I'm stoked to be here.
I'm delighted that you're here, Luke. I am really excited about this conversation. To kick this off, can you just go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit to the listeners out there so they know a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I'm a freelance writer and editor based in Montreal in Quebec. I've been writing and editing for almost 10 years now. I edit part-time or full-time also now at a guitar magazine in the US called Premier Guitar. But yeah, that's the long and short of it. I also make some music.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about your band.
Yeah, we're called Bricky. We're based here in Montreal. It started off as a solo. I had song ideas that I had to get down, so I recorded them by myself, recorded them by with the help of my friend in Kingston. And anyway, it's been kind of rolling since then. It's just a fun little noisy jump around melodic punk music, very influenced by bands like Cloud Nothings, Japandroids, Pup, Tenement, The Weaker Thans, of course. So yeah, it's just a blast making music with your buddies. It just doesn't get much better.
I couldn't agree more. My friend who co-hosts the podcast and we recently have developed a home recording situation with an electronic drum set, and so we're going to try and make some tunes ourselves. And doing that when you're in your 40s is kind of a hilarious endeavor. So I'm looking forward to going down that path again myself in the near future. So Luke, you are here because of a new article that you wrote about John K. Samson or John Samson Fellows and his music for many years. Tell me a little bit about how you first came across the work of John before we get into the nuts and bolts of the article.
Yeah, I was reflecting on this morning quite fondly because I came across it because I was working through university. I went to university in Ottawa at Carleton, and I worked in kitchens there while I was going to school. And one of my co-workers and good friends, John Lucas, shout out John, we'd always play all sorts of stuff in the kitchen off of like a little Bluetooth speaker while everything was melting down and stuff was going crazy. And anyway, he turned me on to so much great music, and I have him to thank for introducing me to John's music, to The Weaker Thans. It was either him or another coworker of ours who also turned me on to propaganda. So, yeah, it was working in the kitchens, man. Yeah, it turned me on to John's work.
What year are we talking here?
This was like 2012. So I came to it, pretty late. I was 19 at that time, and I had I'd never heard of The Weaker Thans or propaganda, I don't think. And so it's just kind of like this door opening to a lovely little musical universe that I was not familiar with.
Were you able to see either propaganda or The Weaker Thans live anytime around this era at all?
No, which is devastating. Isn't it devastating when you find out about a project and you're kind of at the end of it. I have seen Propaganda since then. But no, I missed the weaker thens, and it was I think 2014 or 15 when they announced the hiatus. I have seen John a number of times. I saw him. He did like a little tour of basically living rooms
Mm.
in 2016, I want to say, or 17, maybe 2017. Anyway, I took my dad to see him in Kingston, and for a little living room performance, there were maybe like 20 of us just kind of scattered around this living room in Kingston, and that was really lovely, as usual, a generous and really warm evening. So I've been lucky to see him a couple of times.
That's excellent. Well, I love those living room shows too. If anybody ever hasn't been to like a living room show, I got to see David Bazan from Pedro the Lion do a living room show. Um, Man, it was probably 2014 or 15 at this point. It's been years, but there is something very special about those living room shows. Do you have any like details that kind of just, that you remember about that living room show with John specifically that kind of stand out to you?
I think what really stood out to me and still stands out to me with his work is he played a set of songs that he had picked, and then he stopped and said, "We'll take a break, and if anyone has requests for songs that they particularly like to hear, bring them up, and let me know. Just come chat with me, and I'll see what I can do to play them." And I just they're you know I think so many artists at a certain point in their career have this real aversion to playing requests for some for good reasons, some for not. But John, I think, is it struck me how generous it is to as like a connection with listeners and with fans of his work to say what songs mean a lot to you. Let me see if I can perform them for you. It's not just about him and his vision or some artistic scheme. It's about celebrating and making people feel seen and warm and excited. And anyway, I was really struck by that. I'd never really seen someone offer that sort of generosity.
I love that. I got to interview John in 2023, I guess it was at this point. So John and I have spent a little time together and communicated online here and there in emails and stuff. And his affect and his personality and his communication style is so wonderful. And it's just like you're just sitting next to a good friend on a recliner in a living room chatting. And I could totally see just a living room being the absolute best environment for seeing him live anyway, because he just feels like a living room guy. You know what I mean?
I mean, yeah, he kind of got at that. There's the one line in the story where he talks about, he said, "I'm more of an indoor person." He just, really got the sense that he'd just, be just as happy to, like he said, a recliner is exactly right.
Yeah.
It's, just this relaxed and warm and welcoming affect that's very, very special. I think a lot of people would like to have that way about them, but I think very few people are able to really embody it. And I think it's really special when someone does, like John.
Do you have a favorite John Samson song, album, or era?
I think Reconstruction Site will probably always be my favorite. It's there are so many songs on there that mean a lot to me, and the three kind of framing device songs that follow the same melody that sort of track this a little narrative about illness and death and what those things mean. Um, I think that record on its as a whole will always mean so much to me, and I'll be thinking about it for probably the rest of my life. But specifically, I think "This Is a Fire Door Never Leave Open" is my favorite, all-time favorite song, and I just love what it communicates about memory and about place. And I come from Kingston. I'm from Kingston, Ontario, and I moved away when I went to university, and I've always had um, not a love hate. I love Kingston and have so many family members and friends there who I love so much. But just the way that that song, "This Is a Fire Door Never Leave Open," makes sense of memories and difficulty and struggle and pain and joy in these places that. The one line about, I still hear trains at night when the wind is right is just that says so much to me. I mean, I those little like sense memories, smells, or the way certain colors look, or the way certain sounds come to your ears, and what they bring back to you from, earlier times in your life. I just love that song so much, and yeah, I think it has so much to say about, yeah, the struggle with where we come from.
Random question. Have you ever been to Wolf Island, just next to Kingston?
Uh, it's funny, that's where my mom's family's from. My mom's one of 14 siblings, and they all grew up on a farm on Wolf Island. So that's basically like my home away from home.
Amazing.
Wolf Island.
Well,
Yeah.
if you ever go out there, you should find Chris Brown, who runs a hotel out there, but he also runs something called the Pros and Cons program, and he runs Wolf Island Records, and he played clavinet and Hammond on Propaganda Potemkin City Limits LP.
You're kidding.
I'm
Okay.
not even joking, and you can hear the whole story about it on this podcast. I actually interviewed him a while back, but every time Kingston comes up, I'm like, have they been to Wolf Island? Because I want to go there and check out and hang out with Chris now.
The best place. The ferry ride alone is worth it.
Amazing. Well, I'm glad that you mentioned Reconstruction Site because that's the only time I've ever seen John live. I saw the Weakerthans and the Constantines play in St. Louis, Missouri, on tour together on the Reconstruction Site tour. Amazing time. I saw the Constantines Shine a Light era and the Weakerthans play the Reconstruction era. And dude, mind blowing show. Like we're talking an all timer there for me. So yeah, I have a deep connection with the Reconstruction Site too. All right, Luke, let's stop messing around. Let's talk about your article. You wrote an article, really great. I read it a couple times now at this point. It's called Lay It Down. People love John Samson Fellows' music. He doesn't want to make it anymore. It came out from Hazlitt on March 11th, 2026. A link to it will be in the show notes of this podcast so people can go listen to it. Tell me a little bit about the origin of this piece, Lay It Down.
It was mostly because like many other people, I was wondering what John was up to, where he was at. I kind of followed the um, I don't want to say fragments, but these little threads of work that he's put out since then. A couple of those songs in 2020, Millennium for All, and Fantasy Baseball at the End of the World, and his work and his perspective, his way of looking at the world just have meant so much to me. So I was really curious about what was going on, and I have a good friend, Matt Horseman, who's from Winnipeg, lives there, and he and his partner Nat had this funny connection where, well, Matt knows John a little bit and has photographed him on a couple of occasions, I think. So I just asked Matt if he was in contact with John, and if he'd consider asking John if he'd be up for chatting with me a little bit about a story about, mostly initially the impetus was, I was thinking about the music industry, and I report and think and write and talk a lot about the way that our relationship to our creative practices have been sort of mangled by these ideas of professionalizing them, basically turning them into, you have to hit these certain benchmarks to be a musician, or you have to, follow this particular path to do music professionally. So I like writing, thinking, talking about that, and seeking out people who seem to be, who I imagine to be on the same path or thinking about the same thing. So really, I was thinking about, okay, I was imagining that it was sort of a disdain for the industrial pressures, the professional pressures of music making that would have been the reason that John stepped back from making music. So really, it was kind of in the frame of that thinking that I reached out to him. And there was also I also want to add, it didn't really make it into the story, but the major framing device or thing that I kept coming back to was the line at the end of Post-Op Blues, pursue a practice that will strengthen your heart. And so many people get locked into a creative practice or a professional creative practice that at the end of the day, these stories of disillusionment and of frustration and sadness and even darker endings than that are not uncommon. They're very, very common with people across so many creative practices. And what does it take to step back from this thing that you once loved, or how does it change over the years into something that you don't love anymore? And how do you pursue something that will, strengthen your heart? So anyway, I that was the guiding, I guess, idea or thought behind it as well.
How did your relationship with John develop? Like, what kind of timeline are we talking about for when you first reached out to today?
I first reached out in summer of 2024, I guess. Thanks to my friend Matt, put me in contact with John, and I think I texted or emailed him and asked if he'd be up for having a chat with me. Just a chat to, I could share a bit of what I was thinking about, and see if he'd be interested in speaking with me, for like on the record for a story. So. Um, yeah, I think we had like an hour-long phone call that first time, and we just kind of talked about his stepping back from making music in the spotlight, in sort of broader strokes. Then we chatted on the phone a couple more times between then and I think it was mid-December 2024. Um, I went out there and I stayed with my friend Matt for a couple of nights in Winnipeg. My friend Matt and his wonderful partner Nat. And anyway, I hung out with John a couple of times uh, that week, and we had these great conversations about all of this stuff, and that was sort of the basis um, for the piece. And then the next year, last year, he announced that he was going to put on these solo shows slash craft nights at this church in this church hall in Winnipeg. And I knew I had to go out. I was still working on the piece. It was kind of moving, my editor was moving slowly and intentionally with it. And I was kind of doing the same thing. And then these shows came up, which obviously changed the trajectory of the piece entirely, because initially it sounded like he wasn't going to be performing at all anymore, didn't have interest in performing at all. Um, so then going back out for these shows was another wonderful kind of chapter in this story.
Excellent. You went to John's home, I believe, and saw the loom in the basement, correct?
That's right. Yeah, he was kind enough. He and Christine were kind enough to welcome me into their home. Yeah.
Wonderful. What did you all do there? Just was it mostly just kind of a hangout for an interview for the piece, and then a little tour of the basement crafting space?
It was, yeah, we actually, Christine was upstairs working, but John and I went down to the basement to chat. So we were just kind of sitting amidst all the weaving materials, this big beautiful floor loom, this rigid heddle loom that was also there. Christine made me a lovely cup of tea, and we chatted down there for a good couple of hours, I think. And it was yeah, it was just so quiet and soft and fun, and but he's so generous with like you said, he's a private person and values his, not being in the spotlight, not being a as sort of leader or a thought leader, or really separated, I think, positionally from the rest of the people around him. I think that causes a lot of discomfort, and just being able to sit down and have a chat. It was just so generous. I was throughout this whole process, I've just been so surprised by how generously and how openly he shared, even about such difficult and deeply, personal elements of his life. I think I saw someone note in a bit of feedback on the story that he was always, he's been so generous with his sharing of music and art that means a lot to us. And they kind of placed this article in that lineage and his sharing in that lineage that, people are wondering and interested about what's going on, and how generous of him to share this with all of us. And yeah.
Were you surprised that he's not really working on music at all behind the scenes? Like, because it's one thing to like not perform, but are you surprised that he's kind of seeming like he's stepping back from writing tunes in general?
Kind of. I mean, no, I don't think so, actually. I like, early on, I guess I got that sense, and I like that, that way he described thinking about it, where it was, a worry about it starting to become pathological as like a way to control, or um, yeah, I guess to control the world around you, or to in a way I'd never thought about it before, but I think what he was getting at is, in a way, it can be insulating, or um, yeah, kind of distancing yourself from things happening around you if you're constantly mining them for a song, and then trying to figure out how to best turn them into, this a song that is good, and a song that makes sense, as a poem, as a musical piece, as these things. There's a lot of filtering of experience, I think, that goes on with songwriting, and that can be very fun and liberating, and meaningful. But it can also, I think, yeah, I was interested by the way he seemed to describe it as, a sort of distancing. And uh, he still does like practice, still does like play music a little bit, in his spare time. He was really into playing bass. When I was out there in 2024, he was having fun just playing along to cover songs, and then, every once in a while writing these sort of community songs with community members for protests. Um, so it's still musical practice, still definitely means a lot to him, but just it seems he's sort of moved the boundaries on it. I think, and I really appreciate that, as especially nowadays, when it seems like if you're creative, if you're creating, it has to be sort of all or nothing.
Yeah, well, I like in the article too how you write about the boundary of Winnipeg, the road that runs around Winnipeg as being the boundary of his musical life. Because then, if you look at his most recent musical output, the June 1st EP on Bandcamp, it's like the song "Budget Delegations," and then the Royal Bank of Canada song, and then the Millennium Library song, and then we have his work where he did the weaving, where the lines on the scarf that he was wearing indicated like budget allocations for things like that in the city. So, I mean, it's really cool like how hyper localized he's gotten, and how he's really decided to put any voice that he has that has any influence directly on the life and the lives of those that are immediately surrounding him. That's what it feels like to me.
Totally. I get that sense too. And I think it also made me think. I was thinking the other day about the petition for, what's his name? The Riverton Rifle, Reggie Leach,
Hmm.
off of his first solo record, where, basically the title of the song was a URL to go to, sign this petition to get, this Indigenous hockey player, into the Hockey Hall of Fame. And I don't know if you've seen this clip, but he and a bunch of people gathered in Toronto, and he passed out lyric sheets, I believe, to everyone. He had this petition with all of these signatures printed off, and he had an acoustic guitar, and he kind of led this little march on the streets in Toronto to the Hockey Hall of Fame, and they're singing this song. We, the undersigned, put forth his name to the Hockey Hall of Fame. They deliver the petition, and it's funny. It's when they deliver the petition, I think someone at the Hockey Hall of Fame is kind of like doesn't know what's going on. It's not this big like climactic you know um cathartic moment, and it's all the more beautiful for it. Actions like this, so many actions that people take on in whatever struggle they're doing do not have these big beautiful finishes, but the beautiful thing is that they did it together, and at the end they're all kind of smiling and laughing and clapping amongst each other. And what did they like build that day, amongst each other? I think a really wonderful sense of meaning and community and power, probably,
Hmm.
for having done this together. So I really get the sense that, yeah, that's been a big part of his life for a long time, and perhaps that's more what strengthens his heart, instead of standing up separately from everyone singing these songs, and all of the weird things that come along with that.
I mean, last time I was in Winnipeg was October of 2025. And when I was there, I went into Millennium Library and I was like, okay, these are the metal detectors that they talk about and that John talks about in the song. I'm standing right next to them. So, those types of things are really cool. And we think about how that can be applied to any city and that all of us live in, and how all of us have a voice on these little issues that just kind of compound over time to make societies like less friendly to people in general. And that's what John's work really does for me, is it points out things in life where we tend to get less friendly as a community, but how we can gently push back against those types of tendencies.
Yeah, and I think I was discussing this um, with my friend Matt, and yeah, I guess I was just trying to articulate this gentleness that John seems to have about talking about a lot of political issues. And obviously there's so much rage and frustration and anger, obviously. He articulates a bit of that in fantasy baseball at the end of the
Yeah.
world, this sort of apoplectic feeling of like numbness, or just, whatever. But really in conversation, what a how non-prescriptive and uh, gentle and patient he seemed to be about all of these things, or so many things. Really, I just found really inspiring, and I would also assume that a fair bit of that comes from, I mean, his political values that he's had for decades, but also something that didn't make it into the stories. He works now as um, a literacy instructor at the John Howard Society in Winnipeg. He goes into prisons and jails, remand centers around Winnipeg, I think mostly, but also perhaps elsewhere in Manitoba, and teaches creative writing to people who are incarcerated there, and also works at the actual John Howard Society location in Winnipeg, and manages. He brings books into prisons and jails that people are wanting to read, and sort of discusses them with people. And I think that has a lot to do with it too. From abolition is through our conversations, prison abolition was like one of the most important things that he talked about, and that was guiding his life right now. That's a big thing with his relationship with Quakerism as well, or his faith. He was describing, I don't know if it's that Quakers are the first form like religious group in North America or in Canada to come out not just as prison reformers, but as like prison abolitionists, or with a prison abolition stance. So I know that his faith and that his faith and his values guide that journey a lot, and I think that has a lot to do with his this lack of uh, hard lines on certain topics or on talking about certain people.
What did John tell you about Quakerism that influenced the title of the article, Lay It Down?
Yeah, that was such a he referenced that this Quaker idea of knowing when to lay things down, and him feeling like that had a relationship with his music, but yeah, just knowing when. I'm not too familiar with Quakerism even right now. John is my biggest entry point into it. But it sounds like a really wonderful religious practice and wonderful faith group. And uh, this idea of knowing when to lay things down and let things die and things pass away. I'm still not. I don't want to speak on what it means in Quakerism because I'm still not totally sure. But one of my life's biggest interests is thinking about um, change and mortality and death and how these things underpin everything we do. I love the idea of terror management theory and this idea that this fear of death guides everything that we do in our lives. And it's so rarely acknowledged, or if it is, it's in the context of more dominant North American faith traditions like Christianity or Catholicism that provide this this kind of comfort that even if things do come to an end, they don't really, because we're going to be in heaven afterward and everything's going to be happy and whatever forever. So there's not really this idea with. I think there's this social and political discomfort with things ending permanently, with things ending, or maybe not even permanently. No one knows. Often when things come to an end, whether it's life or anything else, if there's going to be a recurrence, if it's going to be finished for good, but there is a discomfort, a fear with change and with things ending, which is natural. I feel it. Everyone feels it. But learning to let things go and to let, yeah, to lay things down, I guess that's a really, really wonderful. I just picture in my head, like, um, laying down, this, this is morbid. I don't mean a dead child, but when like a child is asleep, in the back of a car and, uh, you carry them inside and lay them down their bed and it's this peaceful quiet thing. That's just kind of the like image or the sense that I get around that idea of this it almost feels like an act of care to lay something down, and to let it go, and for yourself and for people around you, that you can let this psychic space, you can accept it and move forward with it. And it's hard, obviously. I've seen a lot of reception to the article where people are, frankly, expressing a lot of sadness that, they were hoping, even after reading this piece, kind of hoping that John will come back, that the weaker thens will come back in a professional capacity. And I understand it. But yeah, I also think it's a wonderful gift of closure that John has shared with a lot of people. Maybe he will come back. Maybe no one knows. John, he doesn't know. He said at one point after we were discussing a lot of these things, after one of these heavy discussions, he kind of paused and said, "I don't even know if I'm telling the truth right now. This is the first time." this is the first time I'm thinking about these things or talking about these things out loud. So I don't even know if what I'm saying is totally truthful. And I love that. Even that is just such a wonderful admission, you know. Everyone loves to have everyone loves to stand on solid ground or to present something as totally solid and concrete and thought through. But I really like this. I think there's a really important idea in saying, I don't know. I'm not totally sure. And just leaving it at that, you know? That's uncomfortable too.
Well, it's almost like a Fugazi status at this point of like they're on
Mm.
hiatus and there's no indication of any activity whatsoever, but people are always like, well, they never said they were broken up. Do you know what I mean? It's one of those types of bands. So you got to go to the show. Did you just see one of the three shows at the church?
I was lucky enough to see two of them.
Awesome.
Yeah. Uh,
Biggest standout memories of the of those nights?
I think hearing those songs sitting beside my friends Matt and Nat and singing along with them, oh, I just got a little chill.
Mm.
That if I could do that every night, listen to songs with my friends that we love and sing along with them, um, who wouldn't do that, you know? And we were
Hmm.
with a couple of their friends also. Uh, I just felt so lucky and warm and overwhelmed um, to be seated in this little community and singing these songs. Again, shout out Matt and Nat for welcoming me into their little circle. Um, I think yeah, there was this. I think one of the things that's just popping into my head is the way that John, like everyone, sort of lined up around the church before the doors were open, um, or the church hall rather, and uh, as people started slowly filing in, realized that John is just at the door, like welcoming everyone, every single person individually and chatting. And this, the line. The line is not moving perhaps as quickly as it could because John is chatting with people and people are chatting with John. And it's again just this real element of generosity and doing things for the right reasons. I mean, how many people, how many artists? I can't think of many artists who at their shows, say hi to everyone. They're like, oh fuck, I gotta hide out in the green room and gotta hide out in the green room and rest. And it is a huge thing for artists who work on things that mean a lot to people to say hey to them, and it takes a toll. I think of Jeremy from the band Touche Amore. He wrote this really wonderful album that's celebrating its 10th anniversary this year, Stage 4, about his mom's passing from cancer. And then he wound up writing songs years after that about what a toll it took on him to be sort of this vessel for people's sadness and pain and loss. Which at a certain point is meaningful, and people come up and share, and there's this commonality and this shared experience of grief. But then also, if it's night after night, you're sort of the vessel for these people's grief. He forget if the song is called "I'll Be Your Host," but anyway, basically expressing this fatigue with all this stuff. Anyway, I'm rambling, but the way that John was posted at the doors at the start and end of the shows, I just thought was a really, really beautiful gesture and a really, I don't know. I haven't seen many, haven't seen many artists welcome people that warmly.
Well, Luke, what a great article. I'm really glad you were willing to come on and chat about some of your experiences and your appreciation of John's work. I know many people out there listening agree wholeheartedly. Where can you direct people's attention if they want to follow along with your work, find the article, find your music? Where do you want people to go check out?
Um, I guess you can find me on Instagram at Luke Ottenhof. Can also follow my band's work at our band camp, Bricky. Um, I also have a little website, lukeottenhof.persona.co. It's basically just a little portfolio. But I, like many people, I don't know if I think a lot of people are struggling with this or trying to figure out where to share our work and explore other people's work that is not on Instagram or these horrible content machine algorithm driven things. So if anyone's got ideas or working on stuff or has discords or chats, whatever, I don't know, mailing lists, blogs, keep it going and send them to me and let me know how to do it so I can get started on that too.
Awesome. Well, if any listeners out there are wanting to check that out, I'm actually going to put your persona.co website in the show notes as well because I'm looking at it right now and I can see Lay It Down as being one of the recent works right at the top of the links. So everybody go check that out. Hit that link. Luke Ottenhof, thank you so much for joining me on Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda to talk about John Samson Fellows and your article Lay It Down from Hazlitt. Been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. It was a real treat to chat about this. So thanks for having me.